What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Peter Gabriel, and we're back to start going through the second self-titled album, 1978, which apparently is given the name 2 or Scratch, because on the album cover he appears to be scratching the surface between you and him. Ultimately, I'm not familiar if there are any songs on this album as I go to start it that I already reacted to in that greatest hits compilation that I had begun going through, but I'll try to make sure that I'm not repeating anything. But at the very least, I know that I have not already reacted to On the Air, the opening track of this album. Thank you again to Phil for providing this catalog. And yes, ultimately On the Air would suggest something that is either a gas, to speak chemically, or something that is on a more, let's say, not necessarily mythical, but more metaphorical understanding, something that is in the ether, whether it's an idea or a feeling, something that is not just with one person in a physical object or artifact, but something which is perhaps encompassing or what's the right word, inhabiting the larger environment. So I do wonder whether this is a more literal meaning or a more figurative one. I'm guessing more metaphorical or figurative, and even if it is more literal, I'm guessing it would be part of some larger narrative. So I'll just have to see what I can catch on the first listen. This is Peter Gabriel. The tune is On the Air, and it's the opening track of the 1978 album 2, also known as Scratch. I should have thought about radio or television.
Leaving the car down Leafy Lane, turning out tall out from my jungle jail. Want it all, Captain Zero, his brother superhero standing by on call. Oh, it's not easy, no, it's not easy making real friends.
insane opener. That was fantastic. And again, I get it. Labels are something which are, number one, part of the human propensity to try to categorize and classify things, and reality is often more complicated than that, meaning the nice and tidy categories we create often, if not always, fail to reflect the more nuanced reality out in the world. And of course, labels can be distorting in terms of the way some person might see a category and the way another person do. But inevitably, I like many people, are keen to try to characterize what I've heard. And so across the course of that track, it was like, man, it's a bit like psychedelic rock, a bit space rock, a bit hard rock, a bit synth rock, a bit glam rock. It felt like there was a heavy guitar rock feel, but the particular flavor of that felt different at different times as I went through it. His vocals more visceral and wicked than I would normally expect. Now again, I know a very small fraction of his catalog, so there may be other songs where he is a bit raw or edgy in his vocal delivery, and I definitely think there was like a filter or some effect on his voice which gave it this echoed, almost mechanical type of sound. But yes, as I said, there was a raw intensity to his vocal delivery and a very like rock, like a big sound. Now, I was trying to think of like a touchstone to compare it to, and I don't know a lot of Queen material, but there were a couple moments where it's like, does it remind me of a Queen tune? I was trying to place an association, which again, that's also something that can be debated. Some people might think a song sounds like some other band very clearly, other people not so much, other people saying, maybe it does a little bit in this aspect or this, but it's something that, the world of techno and trance is often talking points. So like, oh, it's a kick drum like this tune, but a synth like this producer, and so on. So I suppose it comes from my own personal music history as much as anything. But yeah, a couple points along the way, it felt like, wow, this is maybe different than some of the stuff I've heard from him so far. Although, again, the scale and scope is certainly something I've come to not be surprised by, maybe not expect, but I've heard big and multi-element or multi-ingredient type of tracks with a lot of sweep and so on. But yes, this one had that. It was evolving, it had a big scale to it, and his vocals gave it a ferocious energy. Now, I don't quite know what's happening, but I did fail to consider in advance the idea of, and I did mention, on the air, like an idea or a sound that is permeating a space and an environment, but I didn't think of the literal usage of that term, radio waves, broadcasting, whether, again, you're talking strictly audio or video as well. And then he was talking about, like, superheroes and, maybe not having any real friends, so I'm thinking movies or TV shows, entertainment, and maybe he's keyed into the things that are on the air, but at the expense of his normal life. I didn't catch enough of the lyrics, in part because they were sort of filtered or otherwise affected, which is not a complaint. I enjoyed the way they sounded, but I do think I heard less of them clearly because of that distortion or effect on top of the vocals. But yeah, so I'm thinking that it is talking about broadcast, whether radio or television, and in that regard, it sounds like maybe there's references to the characters or types of stories that may be part of broadcast. Now, of course, that could be music. It might not necessarily be TV shows or, superheroes in a modern sense, like Marvel movies or whatever, but I do feel like there was a reference to broadcast and the images and or sounds disseminated to a larger city or body of people. Nevertheless, I do enjoy the guitar work in particular. I was wondering, it's like, number one, I think I was hearing two guitars, a sort of supporting, like, rhythm or bass guitar, and then there was a flourishing, soloing type of guitar line, and I wondered, is that both Peter? Are the keyboards all Peter? Like, is this something where he's composing all the different parts on the studio track, but then maybe when he plays it live, he brings in other musicians, session musicians, to allow him to perform it live without having to do everything all at once. So I did wonder whether everything we were hearing there was from him or whether there were other musicians recording these tracks in the studio, which of course, I had a friend in high school he created a band that was only him, and then like, I think even right up to the modern day, so we're literally talking like, almost 30 years later, he's still around. It's my friend Jared, who, like, Sick Waiting, SIC Waiting, and, I don't talk to him anymore, I haven't talked to him in many years, but I remember looking on Discogs, and it's like, oh wait, like, he still does Sick Waiting stuff, but in the earliest days of his band, he would record all the parts, the guitar, the bass, the vocals, the drums, and then he would, loop it. I don't know what software or what editing material or equipment or program he was using, but I remember being fascinated by that. I was like, wait, so that's all you? Like, that song that I'm hearing right now, it's, drums, bass, guitar, everything? It's like, yeah, that's the way I do it. So I know from a bit of my own history and experience that is the case for some performances, but I'm wondering about that here. I'll stop boring you with random anecdotes, but do let me know what you think of this. I'm looking forward to going through the rest of the album. Thank you again to Phil. I will see you next time. Peace.